just going to talk a little about our simple living lifestyle. And really for us, the simple living started some 17 years ago now, when we both gave up our jobs at the time to go to India for our first extended period for a 6-month trip. And at that time, having given up the jobs and relinquished the lease on our property, we had to do something with all our physical belongings. And for us, what we did is we put it in a storage unit. Now, obviously, with these storage units, you can get all different sizes. And I wanted to get the smallest unit possible to keep the costs down for the rental period for while we were away. And although we didn't think that we had a lot of physical belongings, we did have quite a lot. And as a result, we had to go through the decluttering process. Now, if you've done any decluttering yourself, you'll know, certainly for the first 1 or 2 times that you undertake it, it's quite a difficult process. It's a simple idea to get rid of things, but in actuality, it's not so easy for many different reasons, mostly emotional attachment to the things that we acquire over the years. However, once we decided that we had to declutter, it was then a case of figuring out the best way to go about it and the most efficient way. And what I ended up doing was quite simply choosing 4 main categories. And for me, that was a category of items to keep, a category for items to give away, donate, or recycle, a category for items to be disposed of and trashed, and then latterly the 4th category were those items for which we couldn't really make our minds up as to which of the other 3 categories as you go in. Now, we knew that we were going to go away, as I say, for this extended period, so we had a little bit of time to go through the process, and it does take a little bit of time. So if you're going to do it for yourself, I would suggest allowing as much time as possible to go through the process. Anyways, having undertaken the decluttering process and gone on our trip for 6 months, when we came back, we didn't immediately take our belongings out of the storage unit. We actually left it probably another year before we eventually took our belongings out. And that was really on the back of the fact that for those 6 months that we were traveling in India, where we had one small 35-litre backpack each, we got to see how little you actually do need, particularly when you're traveling, to sustain yourself. And when we got back, as I say, it took about another year before we got our stuff out. When we did get the stuff out, we suddenly realized, although we thought that we decluttered an enormous amount of our belongings, that what was left, another 50% probably, could have been disposed of in the first place. And we really couldn't understand why we'd kept so much stuff in the first place. So as I say, that was 17 years ago. That was our first long-term extended travel and our first experience of doing declutter. Since then, we've traveled quite often for similar periods of time overseas, and each time particularly we've done the same declutter process, gone through the different categories, keeping items, donating and giving away items, and simply disposing of. For us, over these years, we've realized there are really big benefits to decluttering on a regular basis. So yeah, every time we've gone on these extended trips, we have had to declutter because each time we put our stuff in storage. But because we've realized that there are extreme benefits to the whole process of living simply, living lightly, and for us not having too many physical belongings, we actually declutter on a more regular basis as well. Even when we're settled in a place like here on the island, when we're settled here for several years at a time, we still regularly declutter. Now, for us, the main benefits that we found that apply for us personally is that, certainly because we like to travel, we find that we can have freedom of movement a lot easier every time we come to leave the island and go traveling. The less stuff we have, the easier it is to move. And apart from having the freedom of movement from doing the declutter, there are a number of other benefits as well that we found. And part of that is when you declutter, you free up a lot of space, and the universe will ultimately provide replacement items which will be newer and better to fill the space. Another benefit is, of course, if you're selling any of the items, you can convert those items you no longer need or require into cash, which you can use on other things like travel, if that's one of your particular things that you like to do. And the other main benefit for me is the freeing up of the mental space, because what I found is that when you have stuff, you actually have an unseen mental attachment to all these items that you possess. And the more things that you possess, the more attachments you have to these things. So when you're decluttering and you're releasing these items, you're in effect reducing your entanglements, your mental entanglements to these items. So that's the gist of it. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, decluttering is one of the main things that you can do to start the simple living process. And if you look into it, you'll find that when you start the process, even though it might be difficult at first, the more you do it, the more practice you do at doing the decluttering, the more you start to benefit from it. The lighter you will feel from the divesting of all the physical stuff that you no longer need or want. And for me, when I started the decluttering process, I found Karen Kingston's book, Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui, to be invaluable. I certainly recommend it. It has everything you could possibly need to know about the whole process of decluttering. If you're interested in looking into it yourself, it's worth spending a few pounds to get it for yourself. And yeah, that's it really. I just thought I'd share that for this week's video. An introduction to simple living through decluttering. And as I say, I highly recommend the whole process for yourself. So thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.